When you jump off an aircraft carrier into the open water, you have to consider that you're in a whole new food chain, and you ain't at the top. But these swimmers realize this. That's why there is a gunner on top of the ship constantly watching out for sharks. And if anything, the idea is simple. Aim at the person swimming closest to the shark. That should give enough time for everyone else to get out of the water. But jokes aside, shooting at a shark in the water would be a completely ineffective tactic at neutralizing the shark at best. It can scare a unicorn, and at worst, the bullets may skip off the surface rather than penetrate the water and injure nearby swimmers. After all, sharks are cautious creatures, and before attacking they tend to circle around and inspect their prey for an extended period of time. That's why having a dedicated lookout is actually a great idea. But shooting at the shark is not bullet shot into the water either. Fragment within a few feet, or come to a full stop in less than 6 feet or so. That's why when you shoot bullets at the water, it looks more like a small explosion. As bullets disintegrate into pieces, in order for the bullets to not rupture, they would have to have a different shape like needles. And that's exactly how underwater bullets look. Like the hydrodynamics is very different from shooting bullets in the atmosphere. Even Mythbusters found that a .50 caliber bullet would travel only 1 foot into the water before it loses its lethality. According to the Mythbusters, bullets shot from smaller handguns can actually travel further, about 6 feet. Therefore, even if you hit a shark, you'll likely piss it off even more, which would cause the shark to reflexively attack a swimmer, to be fair to the shark. It doesn't know that it was shot by a gunman from the surface and not the nearby swimmer. But swim calls are only one of the big-ticket fun activities for Navy sailors on warships, with the others including steel beach parties and the occasional beer. But the true celebration involves shooting guns into the sky. Swim calls serve as a great moral-boosting activity for the sailors, and they make for amazing stories down the road. But they look quite different from the 1940s, back during the good old days, before the invention of safety. Sailors were allowed to jump from anywhere, like the flight deck of an aircraft carrier which sits 60 feet high above the water, or even sailors climb the anchor chain, and then diving down, mind you. It looks like these divers knew what they were doing. There was even a story about how one Olympic swimmer was allowed to dive from the top of the island. But today, the Navy is much more risk-averse than it was in the past. Now jumping from 60 feet above the water cannot kill you. But if you land wrongly, it definitely can get ready for sprains and potential drownings. But don't worry. There is always a rescue boat nearby. Falling on the water, wrong can be worse than falling on concrete. Yes, they both can break bones. But there is no risk of drowning in concrete today. Sailors jump off a lowered elevator from the hangar bay, and that's about 30 feet, but it's still too high for many. And if you're not afraid of heights, then besides sharks, there is venomous jellyfish and sea snakes to worry about. The safest way to swim, if you're stationed on a ship that has a well deck, is to fill up the well deck with water and have an Olympic-sized swimming pool for the crew. It's true that the culture of safety has taken some of the fun away from many Navy traditions, but you have to consider the upside too. If something were to go terribly wrong during a swim call, the commanding officer would be held liable, and swim calls could very well go the way of shellback and tailhook parties into the history books. Swim calls happen more often on aircraft carriers than any other naval vessel. Can you guess the vessel with the least frequent swim calls? Hint. It's not a ship, it's the submarines, I must say. Nothing beats using a multi-billion-dollar submarine as a jump pad. But submarine personnel do not pack swimsuits when they go on deployment. According to one submariner, he had 3 swim calls during his 10 years of service. So that's once every 3 and a bit years. But it used to be much more frequent back in the day because submarines would spend much more time on the surface, which meant more swim calls. But they're more like shower breaks. In fact, as you can see, there is a shower and there are more sailors bathing than swimming. But then, yet,